Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Not Just Politics podcast. Today is Friday, February 28th, and we're back in the studio today. Today's guest is a very special guest. Our first guest from Braver Angels, which seems kind of crazy because we've talked about the organization a lot on the show and never had anybody until now. So today's guest is the director of the debate program at Braver Angels, Jessie Mannisto. Welcome to the Not Just Politics podcast.
Hi, Carson. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So just to get started, for if you could introduce yourself, I guess, a little bit more, if there's anything I missed for the people that don't know what Braver Angels is, could you explain how you got involved with the organization?
Yeah. So Braver Angels is a grassroots driven, volunteer led organization dedicated to bridging divides between what we like to call reds and blues, roughly liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, but all sorts of other permeations of that. So we try to keep people from hating each other over politics and help people see where each other is coming from. And the way I got involved was in addition to being the director of debates, I'm also one of the co-chairs now of the Washington, D.C. Alliance. I got involved there a few years ago as a volunteer, like so many of our staff do, and just got into the debates there because as one of our founding values, basically something we call the Braver Angels Way, one of my favorite lines from that is, we speak freely and fully without fear. And I know that that is just something that I, like so many other people today in an age where we can just get, mobbed online, something can be recorded, something can be shared, and people are afraid to speak. So that resonated with me. That was why I joined. And the debates are just so much fun. People feel heard, people feel accepted by others who think differently. It was a breath of fresh air. So I got involved as a volunteer and now I do it full time.
Could you explain because we've done Bridge USA style discussions on this program before. We have never done a Braver Angels style debate. It's obviously a little tougher to do. Video, I have hosted one here at my college campus. Could you explain what sets the Braver Angels debate style aside from, I guess, more of the traditional political debate, which I think has been really steeped in the gotcha stuff and like the man on the street style stuff where everything's cherry picked and there's a winner and a loser. Could you explain how the Braver Angels debates break that mold?
Absolutely. And that is the number one thing that makes us different is breaking that mold with a winner and a loser. We have none in a Braver Angels debate. We all win or lose together, like those board games where now everyone wins or loses together. We're kind of like that. If people there feel like they learned something about why someone would hold a view on the other side, even if they didn't change their mind, I feel like that's a win for everyone. And that tends to be our participants tend to feel that way as well. That's what they walk out of there thinking they took from it, a better understanding of the other side. So our system is built to support that goal. We come out of a modified parliamentary procedure, parliamentary debate style, but it's pretty simple. If that sounds intimidating, don't worry about that. That's for the debate nerds out there. But what it means is we take speeches in the affirmative and the negative, and we alternate between them. That means speeches for the resolution on the table and against the resolution. And we go back and forth. Pretty simple. And that keeps it balanced. That allows both sides to have equal representation in the conversation. And you start learning about the various takes that each side would have. In our community debate, which is the main offering, we do sometimes have something we call a Coliseum debate where we will have experts on there. But most of the time, these are ordinary community members who are coming in and saying what they truly believe. Now, that's another potential difference between some other debate models and ours. In a high school debate competition, you might be assigned to a side that you have to defend. I love to say that that's a great exercise. Everyone should try defending a view that they don't hold at some point in their life. But don't do it in a Braver Angels debate because people come here to hear what you truly believe. Otherwise, what would be the point of what I just said? So, those are a few of the big differences between what people tend to think of with high school debates, or especially candidate debates, right? Like those are conflicts where you're really competing for votes. You're not competing for anything in a Braver Angels debate. You're there to learn about each other.
My first introduction to Braver Angels debates was at the 2023 Bridge USA National Summit. And we had the resolution, "Is America the greatest country in the world?" I
Mm-hmm.
believe was the wording of the resolution. And the one thing that I really loved about it, that was my first introduction. The one thing I loved about it was that we didn't have the red or blue or yellow name tags. But what I noticed immediately, and what I've noticed in every single one of these that I've done, is that people will stand up with a red name tag and they will give you a position that you would expect to come from a blue, or vice versa. And I think what that has done for people in those spaces is it's really broken down their expectations. That's, I think, the biggest thing that it ever did for me, was that it forces people to separate. I guess it almost forces you to separate yourself from your ideology a little bit. And I've always appreciated that. Are there any moments that come to mind for the debates that you've moderated? Any of those just really powerful moments that have happened from people having their expectations broken?
Absolutely. I love that you asked that question. A note on the lanyards, right? You're referring to
Mhm.
at the Braver Angels National Convention,
Yes.
members
Yes.
do have to wear a red or a blue or occasionally a yellow if you're affiliated elsewhere,
Yep.
or a white if you can't disclose
Yep.
lanyard. And it's scary. The first time I walked into a Braver Angels convention and felt like I had to wear my partisan affiliation, my ideological lean, I felt nervous, but it
Mhm.
was actually fantastic because it leads to exactly what you just said. People being curious, people realizing that assumptions about you might be wrong. And so the reason, okay, so we have these lanyards because at Braver Angels, balance between red and blue is one of our founding principles. If we have nothing but reds or nothing but blues leading something, we ask ourselves why. Because as a depolarization organization, we're failing if we don't get multiple perspectives in the room. We will be letting some people down. Now, one of the things I'm fond of saying about that rule of ours is that there are infrared and infra-blue divides as well. And moreover, in a debate, you have to run a debate with the people who are in your room. Now, we do try to help people figure out how to get a diverse audience in their room, in their local alliances, in the local debates they're putting on, in our national debates. We go to a lot of trouble to try to get all the voices in the room that are relevant to the topic that we want to explore. However, sometimes you have the group that's going to come to your local alliance. You have a thing you want to talk about. Maybe you have a very, very blue alliance. Let me give you an example. I was out in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention last year, and we
Mhm.
were doing a community debate, and that room was mostly blue. Now,
Mhm.
in Braver Angels, as I said, we always go for balance, but a debate is actually one of the places where red or blue balance doesn't matter. Balance on either side of the resolution is what matters. And that means we can do something called an infrared or an infra-blue debate.
Mhm.
And what's what we ended up coming up with in Chicago. We had a debate on immigration, resolved Chicago should be a sanctuary city. And as it turned out, we did a live split test in that room. After talking about some topics that interested people in that room, we did a split test. People raised their hand saying, I'd be in the affirmative, I'd be in the negative, I want to abstain because I don't know. Sometimes the abstentions are the most interesting. You learn the most from
Mhm.
why someone's abstaining. We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, we came up with this topic, and that very blue room, it divided them, and there were people standing up saying, I'm really surprised to find that I'm on the affirmative or the negative side of this resolution, but let me tell you about why. And you can see the audience reacting to that. You can see the speaker themselves like grappling on the floor. That's another thing about a Braver Angels debate. We don't require that you prepare ahead of time. We
Yep.
like it when you're thinking things through on the floor. We want to give you a space to do that. So, yeah, that's a thing that happens fairly often when people hear a new thought and they just want to process it together. We give people a space for that. So I think
Mm.
I think I answered your question, but what you're talking about
Yeah.
is a thing we love to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was something that I noticed in Kenosha. I was in the debate. I forget exactly what the wording of the resolution was. I think it was it was either should a convicted felon be allowed to run for president, or it was something along those lines. And
Okay.
what I remember was that at the start of the debate, everybody focused on Trump. That was the
Mm-hmm.
only thing people talked about, and the positions were hardline, and there was a lot of emotion in those, and as soon as somebody said, "Let's look at other people. Let's talk about local offices. Let's talk about just general everyday people," everybody's position softened. Everybody's across the board, and there were reds that were getting up, giving blue positions, vice versa, and I just thought that was really interesting, that as soon as we removed Trump from that situation, everybody felt a little bit differently.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that. We said in Kenosha, we all watched the debate that happened the first night of the convention was
Yes.
the Trump
Yes.
Biden debate. We all watched that together, like 600
Yeah.
people, delegates to the convention in a room. And
Yeah.
I remember discussing with people there, or saying ahead of the debate, hey, we all know what we think about these two men on the screen. What
Yep.
we don't know is what we think about each other. And that's why we're watching this together. And so, yeah, we have a lot of feelings about Donald Trump, whether they are he's going to rescue this country or he's going to burn it to the ground. Very few
Yes.
people have moderate opinions about Donald
No,
Trump.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, it seems like the people I'm surrounded by are only in one of these two camps.
Yeah.
Either he is ascending from as one of my aunts believe, he is ascending from a beam of light with Jesus, like with arm on the shoulder, escorted back into the White House, or he's been an agent of Russia before he was born. He came
Yeah.
out of the womb talking full Russian, saying he came out of the womb like shaking Putin's hand. We only it only feels like we have those two positions.
Yeah,
I've
Tavares.
I've always just taken the position that I think he's kind of like he's a huckster. As one of my
Sure.
favorite comedians says, he's a
Mhm.
riverboat casino captain. That's always like
Mhm.
what I've taken it as. I'm not so sure that he is either of those two things for this country.
Sure.
Um, so on the topic of that, I guess, sort of on the topic of that, I've
Mhm.
talked a lot ad nauseum on this program about ideological blind spots because I am in broadcast production at my university. I'm in the journalism track, and I like all of my classmates, but I have gotten the sense that they really don't understand some of their ideological others, but they
Mhm.
talk about them like they do. And I'm wondering, based on what you've seen, what do you think the biggest blind spots are for the two dominant ideologies in this country? And then at a more personal level, what do you think the biggest blind spots are that just everyday people have whenever they show up to these debates? Sorry, not to throw like a big two-part question at you
Oh
there.
yeah. That okay. Basically, like, yeah, blind spots from each major ideology about what the other
Yeah.
side thinks. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, there's a few things that come to mind. The first is that we used to say if it bleeds, it leads on like the 11 o'clock TV news. And
Yeah.
now we have clickbaits and, things going viral. And the
Yeah.
algorithms love that. It's worse than ever than if it bleeds, it leads ever was. It's
Mhm.
that principle, but on steroids. And so we're all reacting to the most outspoken and the most, dare I say, like emotionally dysregulated of the other side. Those emotions are contagious. Someone is upset. They're either on our side, we relate to their fears, and so if they're afraid, we get more afraid. Like humans are social, we amplify
Yep.
the emotions of those we agree with, that we affiliate with. Or the other side is looking scary, like they're going to come for us, like, oh my god, they're saying what? And those people are out there. I am not being black and white about this. There are extremes, and we can feel how we feel about those extremes. But people are so often surprised to hear, hey, I actually kind of agree with you, or I prefer a different policy, but you're making good points. Your arguments are reasonable, even if I would choose something else. That is the most surprising thing for most people, that their opponents have good points and are not so far from them. That they're not the people they're hearing the algorithms feed up to them, and that's got a lot of implications. That's not in you've heard people say that before. I'm not making a new observation, but it is the thing that repeatedly
Yeah.
surprises people. You know?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we kind of sound like broken records whenever we say that at this point is because I do kind of get the sense that, and I don't know, I don't mean to sound like one of the people that we're discussing, but it almost seems like people still don't get that.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Right.
they're too or maybe that fear is overcoming their ability to see that. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but on campus, I've still like recently been running into people that think that like Bridge USA is a conservative organization, and that, what are you guys trying to do? What are you guys up to? And it's this weird like suspicion of
Mm-hmm.
those people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just, and that part I think has kind of been frustrating to me recently. Is I'm looking at these two groups and I'm like, guys, you're not that far apart on a lot of this stuff. It's not like you're allowed to
Yeah.
think different things, but your guys are not as far apart. It's like the perception gap, I think, is what
Mm-hmm.
that's called.
Well,
Um,
where do
hmm,
you build trust, right? Like that's
yeah,
where when I approach these groups, like, hey, I get it. Like, you don't believe me. And we get it. We get hashtag both sides. At Braver Angels, we know we're doing well when we get angry
yes,
messages from both sides.
yes,
So, but I get where both sides are coming from, why they're
hmm,
afraid, right? Like, oh, I regularly hear, oh, you're such a liberal organization, oh, you're such a conservative organization, and I take that as good feedback. But
yes,
also from my position, I have to understand why they're saying that. And it's
sure,
walking a balance beam. And part of walking that balance beam is reaching out to both sides and figuring out, hey, how can I earn your trust?
mm,
You're afraid of something. There's a reason you're afraid of it. Is there something I could do to set you at ease? What can I show you? I won't just tell you, right? Actions
hmm,
speak louder than words. What can I do to show you? You know?
mm. Yeah, I actually really like that, like saying, "What can I show you?"
Mhm. To
Because
earn the trust, to start
it,
building it over time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it is really funny, like the point you made. It does kind of seem like if you are in the position that you are in or that I'm in, the way that you're doing a good job is whenever everyone's angry at you. It's like what Bill Burr said. It's like you don't. That's how the goal is, like Bill Burr says. Like my goal is to try to get everybody. Like
Yes.
nobody should be safe from the jokes in the same sense of like what we're doing. Um nobody should be exempt from having their viewpoints challenged,
Sure.
and they shouldn't be exempt. I guess if they're showing up to that space, because it's all voluntary. So if you're volunteering to show up to this space, you have to expect that your ideas are going to be challenged. You're going to learn something new. And I think that people also get a lot. I think what I've picked up on is that there is a comfort aspect to ideology a lot of the time. And I think people
Mhm.
get uncomfortable with the idea of having to leave that space. Um, so this is something I wanted to bring up when you'd mentioned that, like you said, that it's the conventions are, and everything that Brave Range does is that red blue split. Something that I had heard in Gettysburg that I did not hear in Kenosha, and I wasn't sure if this was still something that the organization was having trouble with. But
Mhm.
in Gettysburg in 2023, somebody, I believe, I think I just sat in on like one of the red caucuses, I think is what I did.
Mhm.
And or no, it wasn't. It was for approving. It was for approving the platform. I think it was for,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
was like, here's
Okay.
what we're gonna do. And so a red stepped up. This gentleman stepped up there, and he said, "This is great and all, but the only reason why this works is because we told all the blues to stay home because couldn't find an equal number of reds to match that." And I'm wondering, is that still something that you guys are seeing? And I think that was something that was almost kind of like a movement wide problem at the time, was that everybody was having trouble getting reds to come out, which is really funny because the common misconception is that it's all sneaking conservatives. And I'm like, guys, there's more blues running this stuff than reds. Like there's more of you guys running this. You know what I mean? Then is
Yeah.
that still something you guys are looking at?
It absolutely is. And I was in that room. I remember when someone said that in Gettysburg at our 2023 convention as a volunteer, right? I wasn't staff
Yeah.
yet at that point. And yeah, it's true. Like we try to recruit Reds because for the convention, for delegates who have the power in this volunteer movement to decide things, to vote on things. It's not the staff decreeing these things. It is the
Yeah.
volunteers, the delegates. And so we insisted, we had as a rule there will be an equal number of reds and blues with the lanyards, right? And so but it's also true that our membership does lean blue on balance. So I do a lot of work to think about that, to understand why, to figure out what is it about the when I say red, that includes, old school conservatives, but there are infrared and infra-blue divides, as I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Also on the Democratic Party side, there's, the progressive activists and sort of the normie liberals. I hope I
Yep.
wasn't insulting anyone with that divide, but Hillary versus Bernie,
Yeah,
right?
it's the sort of Joe Biden moderate, and then
Yeah.
there's the people that I'm surrounded by is this a more progressive crowd. Some of them
Hmm.
identify as leftists, but not all of them do. And um,
Yep.
I guess more of like an aside point, it does kind of seem uh, like the right is a little bit more ideologically, not entirely ideologically homogenous, but there does seem to be less subcategories within the right than there are within the left. There's like four different factions, like main factions that I see within the left right now. The right doesn't seem as splintered.
But I don't want to call you out and make you announce your affiliation, but if you're of the left, you might see the divides within the left more. Do you think that might
No,
be it?
I had two yellow name tags.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of a
Interesting.
centrist. I lean right a little bit on some stuff, lean left on other stuff.
Oh, gotcha. My
Yeah.
guess was wrong. Okay. So I
Hmm.
do see some divides in the right. Um, there are a lot of old school conservatives who really are frustrated with what Trump is doing. I don't think
Yep.
that's news to anyone.
Nope.
There's the libertarian versus the social conservative. So I see a lot of
Yeah.
divisions on the right as
Oh, that's
well.
a good point. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about that. I never I always think about I never think about libertarian leaning right or left. I always just think
Sure.
libertarian. But that is a good point. There are
Well,
the sort of right leaning libertarians as well.
well, there are socialist libertarians as well, right? Like
Which I
these
don't really understand. Those don't seem like they can go together in my head based on the understanding, but that is true.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it to you to find a socialist libertarian to come on your show. I
I
can't
would love
explain that
to.
either.
I would love to because I don't know. Okay, so
Well,
going back to the debates. Oh, sorry, I didn't
mhm.
mean to cut you off. You
What
have
I
a
was going to say, like, I want all of them in my debates. I want the
yeah.
socialist libertarians. I want the Trumpers. I want the old school conservatives who are mad at the Trumpers, the MAGA, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call them. I want them all. I
Yeah,
don't only want, like, I think I said some things earlier that kind of suggested, oh, these extremes. I want them in the room too
sure.
because I care
Yeah,
what they think as well. They are a part of the debate. And so for
yeah,
Trump voters trying to reach out to them, I'm trying to establish trust and show them. I think many of them feel like they're rebelling against a system that just hasn't cared about them at all. And so to
sure.
get more of them in the room, I want to know what it is they want to hear said, what they wish they could say, and to demonstrate to them, no, I mean it. I'm going to give you a platform to say the thing you think matters. So that's how we
Mhm.
approach any group that is underrepresented in Braver Angels.
Yeah, and that was the one. That was the one reason. So one of the main reasons why we haven't done more Bridge USA style discussions on the program is that I just can't find conservative students around here. Just none of them are vocal. The only ones that I know are conservative don't say anything because
Yeah.
they're afraid of pushback for a lot of reasons. Going back to the debates, that's I think is something that you'd mentioned. I wanted to touch on this again. Something that I hear a lot, something I've heard from students here whenever I ask them to be a part of the Bridge USA style discussions is they go, "Oh, I don't really know anything about the topic,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't think I should be there." And I don't know. Uh, Maybe you have some advice on this. I don't know exactly how. I mean, I gave them pretty much the pitch that you just brought up that like we like people thinking things through on the fly. You don't have to come through with all the information. You don't even have to talk. You can just sit down and listen.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really seemed to work with people. They still seem kind of nervous. Have you found any way of helping people work past that fear?
Um, yeah, it depends on the cohort, on the group, what their
Hmm.
expectations are. There are a few different ways you can do it. I always lead with, I want to know your personal story. A lot of people think that in a debate they have to have, a rigorous intellectual argument supported by research and studies and whatever. And I try to lead with, no, your story is what people want to hear. And that, if you take it out of the debate context, people get that intuitively. Like, you remember somebody's story,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
At a recent debate, we heard from an anti-vaxxer who explained her story of why she is an anti-vaxxer. Now, people were saying to me, like, oh, I still am very pro-vaccine, but I get why she's not, right? She was
Hmm.
extremely memorable. So inviting people, reframing what we're doing to, hey, if this moves you in any way because of any experience you had, making it clear that that we do want to hear that. That's the first thing. But okay, so now I'm thinking, well, what about the people who don't have a story? They just don't know anything about it. Um, I would say to those people, I would say just read a little bit about it beforehand. If the topic interests you enough that you
Hmm.
want to come and talk, just go find your own sources, whatever you trust, and read about that and think about it, and then write a few bullet points down and come and talk about those things. That is a wonderful contribution. Now, what I didn't say, you'll notice, is I don't give them reading assignments ahead of time.
Yep.
Sometimes our volunteers who want to run debates are really eager, like, oh, Jessie, people don't know what they're talking about. Can I give them reading assignments? Now, I'm usually very wary of this because you are
Yeah.
endorsing those that you send out. Even if you say, like, we don't endorse these, implicitly you're guiding the debate, and
Right.
that may be
Right.
you may choose to do that, but I prefer, and I like the results better when people bring whatever sources they listen to. And people ask, that's a question sometimes people ask when they totally disagree. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I ask the speaker where he got that information from? I hear that question very often.
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly fine question. Say, like, oh, I
Sure.
got that from, I got that on Fox News, I got that on CNN, I got that from
In a dream.
Breitbart, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It came to me in a dream. That's
Yeah, right.
that sources me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Divine inspiration, man. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
yeah. And for me, that's another question we get a lot. Why don't you fact check your debates?
Yeah.
Hey, the minute I do that, I cede the neutrality of my space, and the
Yeah. It's
side
over.
that I tell, hey, no, that's not true, they walk out. And we miss getting from them what they had to offer, which was why they see the world the way they see it.
Yeah, and that was something I forget who I've asked this question to a few people. I forget exactly who. I think I asked this to the Ross and Manu from Bridge USA at some point.
Mhm.
Um, but that's something I've because I really believe in that parliamentary style debate. I think if it has any weakness, it's probably that you just mentioned. Like we want to build because I've always thought like how do you strike a balance between building trust and also like you said, like you're not going to fact check things. Like Brave Angel says they're
Mhm.
not a fact checking, they're not an adjudicating organization in that sense. They're a trust building movement. So
Yeah.
how do you strike that balance between like you said you could just have everyone bring their own sources. Um does that not in some sense make the misinformation problem a little bit worse?
What a great conversation, or a good question. We had a conversation about that in the Washington, D.C. Alliance membership meeting last week, and people got really into it. They kept saying to me, not as director of debates, but as one of the leaders of the Alliance, Jessie, we have to talk about misinformation.
Mhm.
And we had a pretty robust conversation about it. But it comes back to trust.
Mhm.
Who do you trust and why? And so I think, to answer the question you asked here, I would say trust you to do what? As long as we at Braver Angels make very clear that we are not here to be yet another news source. We are not here to adjudicate truth. We do not offer that. We are clear about that. What we are going to do is let you hear from a lot of voices. We're doing what we said. So that's, we're not going to be all things to all people. We do sometimes have expert panel debates because what people want is to be given information about a topic rather than to hear what the community thinks. So we do those sometimes, and sometimes they pair together very nicely. We have a panel followed a week later by a community grassroots debate on the same topic. And you can argue about what those experts had to say. You can question whether they were good authorities on the topic. But that's as close as we'll get to trying to offer something like authoritative information. And we're clear about that. We tell people why we're doing it and what we're aiming for.
What is your assessment of the like what sets Gen Z apart when doing this work as opposed to, I guess, other generations of people that you've worked with?
My answer is not going to be original, but it's what I think is true. And it's the same thing, Jonathan Haidt and Gene Twenge have been saying, the anxious generation. You guys grew up with smartphones and social media.
Yeah.
And I am in an interesting position. I am fond of telling people when this comes up, I'm probably the oldest person you'll meet who grew up on the internet. I graduated from high school in the year 2000, and I had a web page in the 1990s when it was it was a niche, quirky interest. Like you were the quirky kid who had the web page, and other people weren't even on the internet yet, right?
Yeah.
Because I liked creative writing. When I was in high school, college, I did a lot of that, and that was a great thing to do with the internet. But noting how the things that were challenges that I faced that my peer group didn't face, and I would talk to them about internet dynamics and see they didn't know what I was talking about, that these sort of troubles that would come up when you would write in a blog or share things with this mass network and you don't know who is seeing it. Everyone else who's my age as a teenager didn't understand what that was. Now they all do, of course. They're, we're the elder millennials, whatever. And they all have smartphones too. But my particular point in this timeline made me see how I was different from others. And now all of you in Gen Z have that problem that I had, except an order or two of magnitude greater. But I get it. Yeah. I'm like, I see why everyone is stressed out all the time. I see why people are on edge. I see why people are afraid that someone might come for them, because they did for me when I was 15, and the adults had no idea what I was dealing with and they couldn't help me at all. So the coping mechanisms that Gen Z have come up with make total sense to me, man.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I definitely have gotten that sense that I'm such a social media hater at this point. I deleted Instagram off my phone.
I deleted Facebook this week off the phone. I'm so done with it.
I haven't read The Anxious Generation yet, but I read The Coddling of the American Mind, and I watched the document. I watched the documentary in Kenosha whenever it. I guess that was like an unofficial premiere type thing. Yeah, I have just gotten that sense that I think that something that we might have to be careful about is just, like you said, the anxiety and the fear aspect of it. Like we're probably more susceptible to that than other people might have been because we can be so easily manipulated online.
Yeah. And then you bring those feelings into in-person environments where you don't really need them because you have so much more information about a person when you know them in person. You see their body language. You have more access to their background and their history, which are all things that are essential to evaluating, let's come back to that word, the trustworthiness of an interlocutor. Maybe a controversial statement, but some people are more worthy of your trust than others. And that may fluctuate over time and situation too. But online,
well, I don't think that's controversial to say at all. I mean, if we're gonna say that Fox News and I don't know. I mean, it's just no. I don't even think that's controversial at this point.
Okay, well, you said you were slightly right leaning, and that's where I am now. I'm a weird checkerboard, but that's a place where I'm more of a red. And I just feel like someone from my other side, my opponents would yell at me, but maybe I'm wrong. Like, I would love if someone's listening to this and they want to tell me like, no, Jessie, you're wrong. But this comes out of my fear, right? The things I've gotten in trouble for saying before. So we all have our triggers. Dare I use the word trigger? Our twitchy points.
Right. So, the co-founder and president of Braver Angels, David Blankenhorn, has announced that he is stepping down from his
Yes.
position. He sent out an email to all of the members. His last day is June 30th.
Hmm.
Um, he said, I'll read a little quote from this because I thought this was great. He said, "The decision is mission driven. I've known for some time that as Brave Angels got bigger and more complex, we'd need new energy and leadership. As in many organizations, there is a time for founders to do what they do and a time for them to hand things over to leaders capable of taking the organization to the next level. For me and for you, now is that time." And I just respected the hell out of this because I don't know if this might be a bit of a generational difference, but I think that Gen Z is looking at a lot of stuff in the world right now and questioning everything, questioning
Hmm.
legacy systems, questioning old ways of doing things, and trying to find something new. And what it seems like is that there is a group of people in positions of power that just will not let go of it, no matter what. Like, if Biden tries to run for president in 28, I won't even be shocked. I wouldn't even be surprised. And I just respected the hell out of this because I've never, I haven't seen too much of this in my life. What do you like and respect most about David as a leader?
He's a visionary. Braver Angels
Yeah.
was his idea with, of course, there are three co-founders, David
Yep.
as well as David Lapp and Bill Doherty, and they came together to create this. But David stepped up and had this idea, reached out to David Lapp the day of the results of the 2016 election came through, to his red friend, and said, "Hey, everyone in Manhattan is crying. What's it like out in South Lebanon, Ohio, David Lapp?" He's like, "Well, actually, we're doing really well here." And just the idea to take that impulse and run with it and try to do something constructive, building on his history, working on various causes before that, just bringing that to the table and addressing this moment. David has wonderful ideas about rising to meet the moment. He pushed for us to respond to the distress that many of our blue members are having in the wake of Donald Trump's reelection, which is so different to everyone. It feels so different to everyone than the first election that caused this
Yeah.
organization to be founded. And David Blankenhorn challenged us to rise to this occasion and set something up quickly. And that's just one example of the sort of vision that he has called on this grassroots movement to rise. He's called on us to rise to that challenge, and he's pointed the way. So whoever follows him will have big shoes to fill.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What do you think? What's maybe one or two things that, and you may have already touched on them, but anything additionally, one or two things that the new president could adopt from David's style to try to fill those shoes? Because I agree. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
going to be an easy thing to step up and do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think honestly, the new leader will have to figure out why David did things the way he did them, and
Mhm.
then adapt, to his or her own style to figure out what is the moment now, because nothing stays the same, right? You never stand
Yep.
in or step into the same river twice. And so this new president, I have a little bit of a micro version of that myself, being the second director of debates in Braver
Yep.
Angels. And I have a different style than my predecessor did, though I learned from her, April Lawson.
Hmm.
And I look at why she did it. I look at the situation they were going through at the time, and I think, all right, this is what I see. Do I think I should deviate from the person who we all respect so much who founded this program? And so that's going to be the real challenge for David Blankenhorn's successor. Where do I keep going? Do I understand why he did it that way? Because one of the principles that I really love is something called Chesterton's fence. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know Chesterton's fence.
Yeah.
But do you want to explain it? Should I explain it? Because probably maybe some of our
Um,
listeners don't.
Well, so from what my understanding is, it's like if you're walking through a field and there's a fence in your way, you should
Mhm.
not immediately remove the fence. You should ask why the fence was put there because it might have put
Yes.
there for a reason. And if you just walk through it, you might face an unintended consequence.
Exactly. G.K. Chesterton says, you if you want to take that fence down, tell me why the fence is there. If you can't
Yeah.
answer it, then I'm not going to let you take the fence down. The minute
Yeah.
you can say, this is why it's here, sure, fine, make the judgment to take it down. So
Yeah.
that's what every new leader has to figure out. Why is the fence here?
Definitely. Okay. A little bit of a hard pivot here.
Sure.
You worked for the CIA for 4 years. What are you allowed to talk about? That just it just seems like that's not something you see on everybody's LinkedIn page. So I just had to bring it up. How did you get involved in that?
Oh, I could tell you how I got involved. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Mhm.
I went to grad school. I did information policy, which would have qualified me to work at a library. Remember, I liked creative writing. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just
Yeah.
work at a library and write stories, right? And I was interested in intellectual arguments. Now I'm in a debate program. Didn't know you could be a director of debates at the time,
Yeah. Right.
but the program after going through it, I thought this isn't exactly the right choice for me. But fortunately, I went to the grad fair, the career fair for graduates, and there was a booth for the Central Intelligence Agency. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting hard turn, right? And I'm like, here's my
Yes.
resume, and the guy's like really bored, but I'm like, hey, if I were to, they're going to all these fairs, right? And they hear
Yeah.
probably the same thing over and over. And I just remember he reacted to me when I said, I'm really interested in learning Chinese. Could you teach me? Would the agency teach me Chinese? And he's like, wait a minute, give me your resume,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I guess like I don't know. That's how I ended up there. I didn't end up learning Chinese. I learned some
yeah.
a different language.
That who has to table that? I mean, that's got to be the worst email, being like, "Hey, you have to go table the college fair." It's like, oh my god, the worst job. Um, that world is at the center of conspiracy. It feels like
Yeah.
all the time,
Hmm.
whether it was MK Ultra, whether it was the connections to the drug selling in certain communities. Um, do you look at any of that and roll your eyes to a certain extent, or is it understandable where that comes from?
I mean, wow, that's a great question. I haven't gotten that one before. No, of course it's understandable where it comes from. Without saying anything about the actual content, of course we like secrets, right? Like
Yeah.
these things are hidden. This comes back to the question of trust, right? Do we trust what this government agency is doing? And government agencies do get things wrong. And there is I'm not going to go into any details about
Oh,
what was going
of
on.
course, no,
There's
of
stuff
course,
out there. If you can look it up
of course.
yourself. There's plenty of things we could fault my former
Sure,
employer for.
sure.
But the thing is, the people who work there also are aware of that and are also like, the thing I loved the most about being there was these people who work this difficult life that has requires you to give up certain things are there because they care about the mission and they
Mhm.
wanted to do the best job that they could to be the most upstanding people they could. And by and large, that is what I would say about the workforce.
Yeah.
Every group, especially you want to get in there. That's why they have such security clearance is a hard thing to get. It's
Mhm.
not a perfect system, but that's what I would say to people who, again, understanding why you shouldn't just automatically take the authority of a secret agency. Someone's got to be holding it accountable. But those are also the people there were some of the most upstanding, patriotic people that I've met who really, regardless of their political beliefs, want the best for the country.
Yeah, I think that's one of the tough things for people that are outside of the world is that it's so secretive, and I think it's so easy to jump to conclusions and make assumptions about the people that work in that business, but very few people get a chance to talk to any of those people, like actually have a conversation with them. Are you able to? Sorry, I'm not meaning to be pushy. I'm just very curious. Are you able
Sure.
to give any details as to the day to day of intelligence analyst?
I have a cleared little sample that I can tell people about what I did, so I'll give you that.
Okay, sweet.
I was something called a leadership analyst, and I focused on a region of the world. I focused on Eastern Europe, and I did basically biography. I wrote biographies, psychological reports, and I love biography. It's one of my interests, so I was very excited to get that role. The day to day is you're sitting in a cubicle reading a lot of reports, white screen, dark gray Courier New, reading stuff, and you're
Mm.
putting it together. You're trying to look for the holes in the data, what doesn't make sense, what sources don't line up, and you're writing reports. It's that simple, right? Like, to a lot of people,
Mm.
this would be really, really, really boring. Not to me. I loved it.
Yeah.
But that's the honest truth of it. You read some things that are like really highly classified because it was difficult to get a hold of it. That doesn't mean it's interesting, right?
Sure. Sure.
So yeah.
Did you work? I mean, did you work at Langley, or were you working remote?
I was at Langley, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess maybe you touched on this with the previous question. I guess give you an opportunity if there's anything else. What are the biggest misconceptions about the work that you did, or more in generally the work that uh, the agency does?
Um, I think we've basically covered on them, right? You're thinking of this
Yeah.
like sneaky, nefarious, sunglass wearing,
Right.
holding a pistol, driving around
Right.
really fast. I mean, I'll let your listeners can size me up. Like, my husband
Sure.
sometimes jokes, like, "Oh yeah, you're not what I think of when I think of the CIA," but I kind of should be. So I mean, I could talk
Sure.
about
Sure.
myself. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
easiest way to answer that.
Yeah, it definitely is. What that's another thing too, is like not everybody is in the field, right? There's people that are just working in cubicles. I imagine. Is that? I guess here's another. It's more of a side question. Is that the majority of the people that are working there in a cubicle?
I can't answer that
Okay.
question.
Okay. So I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not meaning to ask questions that you can't answer. I'm just genuinely curious.
You don't get in trouble for asking me questions. That is
True. No,
perfectly allowed.
that's true.
Yeah.
You right. Okay.
It's on me to answer or not answer.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, how did working in that field shape your view of government and politics?
Ooh, that's a good question too. Um, it isn't even so much that field. Everything I say will apply to that field, but I
Sure.
live in Washington D.C. I have friends who
Mhm.
work for the Department of Defense. I have friends at
Yep.
HHS. I have friends at Health and Human Services. I
Yep.
have friends. Why do I know so many people at Health and Human Services? I have no idea why. I think I know someone at the DOE, the Department of Education and the Department of Energy, both DOEs.
Yep.
And USDA, right? I know people at various organizations. And so what I described about CIA is pretty much true everywhere. I mean, CIA has a really particular focus on mission because of the nature of the work and the secrecy and the constraints, right?
Hmm.
But across the government are dedicated career servants who just get up every morning because they really believe in the importance of what they're doing. Now, that's, I mean, banal perhaps, but it is the truth. And yes, there's government waste. Yes, there were people who were so called retired in place, and that's a little easier to do in government than it would be in some other organizations. But, you know, the things that they're passionate about are useful, right? Like my friend who works in agriculture, who knows so much about something that none of us would care about, but it
Yeah.
matters, right? Like, I don't even remember what I see. She's told me, and I don't remember because I'm like, that sounds really boring. But I'm glad she cares, and I'm glad we're paying for her to do it. It has something to do with like importing soybeans or something to make sure that our supply chain for our food is working the best way that it can
Hmm.
work. So there's a bunch of nerds and wonks out here who we owe a debt of gratitude to. And otherwise, you know
Right.
what? Washington, D.C. is a sea of cubicles. So be grateful to those people who go there
Sure.
and do this work. And it's
Yeah.
not that, I mean, yes, you should question the, like, and every government employee that I know would say this, like, hold us accountable. We work for you. And so, yeah, I think there's a version of Doge that I could get behind, because those of us who
Mhm.
are government employees who are dedicated hard workers, we know that guy who's not, and
Sure.
we would be like, you know what? Maybe that job should go to someone else. But
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
of course it happens, and um it's not most people, it's
Mhm.
not.
What have you taken from your time there into have you taken any of the stuff you learned there and applied it to the debate program at Braver Angels, or just more in generally to the movement, to the work?
No, I sure have, because the directorate of analysis where I worked,
Hmm.
you are working with other analysts. No
Right, you're
single
direct.
person, right,
Right.
has all the information, has the full perspective to say what's happening. And so you absolutely must be able
Hmm.
to listen to other people's arguments, to speak freely and fully without fear and say, I think you're missing it. You can't just be nice because, if you're just being nice when someone says, hey, I think it's perfectly fine if someone learns to fly a plane without learning to land it. I don't want to say,
Ah!
that. Then look what
Yeah.
happens, right? Like, you
Right.
have to call these things out. If you think someone's making a mistake, you have
Yeah.
to be assertive. Debate training is great assertiveness training, but at the same time, you listen. You do the same for others. You put yourself out there. You understand that as part of the mission, as part of the team, you need to have someone question you, and that it is in good faith, and that being questioned in that environment is an act of respect, not an act of tearing you down. And that's what I want our debates to work like too.
Okay, well, another hard pivot. We're
Sure.
leaving Langley behind. You worked as the editor in chief for Third Factor magazine. How did you get? So I'm guessing, is that just the? Well, I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm assuming now that I know the creative writing track,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
makes more sense. How did
Mhm.
you get involved? Did you start working there? Did you work your way up, or did you step into that position
No. Oh, yeah.
there?
The way that Third Factor came to be, I'll tell you the story.
Hmm,
So this is actually not such a hard pivot. There's a natural little story there. I am grateful for the time I spent at CIA. I'm so glad that was a part of my life. And I like being a little bit more out there and talking to people and ideating with people. And so I didn't want to stay in a security cleared position for my whole life.
sure.
And that's why I don't work at CIA anymore. I wanted to be involved in grassroots, sort of like, look, I run a debate program. Like, I'm so happy to
Yeah.
be where I am right now, talking to any old person about whatever they want and
Yeah.
arguing about it, but constructively. And so Third Factor was a thing that I founded in that space in the middle where I was doing consulting with private clients, trying to figure out what would come next. I knew that I wanted to try to build something. I wanted to have an entrepreneurial experience. And so I set up Third Factor magazine in 2017. Actually, 2018, it was formally founded. We were planning for a while before that. I found a partner, figuring out who to work with and like getting your goals in line. This is all like really important soft skill stuff that you don't really learn until you do it.
Yeah.
Do it in high school, do it in college clubs is the best place to start out. But I got a little bit of a later start. And Third Factor was that. It was trying to build a thing. If you build it, they will come is not true. It's,
Yeah.
but
No.
yeah, you're a content creator as well. You got to do the work, figure out
Yes.
how to get your message out there, who needs what you are selling, how you make your product the best it can be. So I founded it because I wanted to discuss something that I didn't see being discussed elsewhere. Now, it kind
Mhm.
of was, but not really in the way I wanted. It's grounded in a theory called the theory of positive disintegration, which is a psychological theory. Kazimierz Dabrowski is how it's spelled out in English looking letters. But this just theory really got me thinking about sort of a nexus of psychology, growth psychology, and also philosophy, which were interests that I had that I hadn't really been able to explore to my liking before. And Third Factor was an attempt to do that. I also came out of political activism, and so that shaped a lot of the discussion that I wanted to have there. The psychology of activists who wanted to make the world better, but were they doing it really to make the world better, or was it to address something inside themselves? And was that a bad thing? That's not a bad
Mhm.
thing, but why are
Sure.
we doing what we're doing, and what is the end goal? I could ramble on about any of those things, clearly, which is why I created a magazine, so I could ramble on
Mhm.
about all of them together with other people. That's what Third Factor was. And I would have kept doing it, but running something like that on your own is tough.
Is
I
very
did have
hard.
I had some paid staff, but then the opportunity to come on board as staff at Braver Angels. Like I was running Third Factor and also volunteering with Braver Angels. When I
Gotcha.
got this opportunity, I realized that Braver Angels was doing something very similar, not exactly the same, but applying. It was almost like applying the abstract thoughts I was thinking at Third Factor, and now I'm actually doing something with it. So it was an easy choice to move on to a team that still allows me a lot of creativity, a lot of ability to shape my own work, and yet it also brings together people who I can work with. I don't have to run the whole thing
Yeah.
myself. So this is perfect. This is the end of my trail so far. Who knows where I'll go next? I hope I'm here for a good long while because I love what I'm doing.
Yeah, running something like that on your own is incredibly difficult and taxing, in a way that I think people that don't, not to sound like I've always it's a random thing. I've always hated uh whenever content creators say that what we do is harder than a, like a working class 9 to 5 job, because I've done that and I just don't I just I've always hated that sentiment. I think it is difficult in different ways. I don't think it's more difficult, but I think that there are a lot of difficulties with that kind of stuff that people that don't, I guess, kind of obvious, right? That people don't do it, don't really see. Um, so that's difficult to do. So kudos to you for for doing that for
Hey,
as
thanks.
long as you did. Um, what do you think? So then, having done that, what is your, because I'm in the media track at school. What's your honest assessment of what the hell the media's like? I almost don't even know what it is that they're doing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've been given so much information about how the industry works and I understand less. Um
you know,
and
yeah, Carson. I
what,
think.
what do you think they're up to? Like what are they doing, especially in the aftermath of the election? What do you think they're doing right and what do you think they're doing wrong?
Oh man, I don't know if I'm even qualified to answer, but I'll be like my debate participant and be like, I'll think on
Yeah.
the floor with you, you know?
Yeah,
What are
sure,
they doing
sure.
right and what are they doing wrong? I think first of all, I think we are all figuring out how to live well in this in this brave new world, dare I say,
Sure.
together. No one knows. Everyone's like, holy crap, what's going on? I mean, we at Braver Angels are doing that. Who knows
Mhm.
how to run a depolarization organization?
Right. Right.
We are building the plane as we are flying it, as many of our volunteers like to say. And I don't think we're alone in that. The
Mhm.
media landscape has transformed so much. The
Yeah.
funding model, right? The
Yeah.
niche audience model. And every person has to, put bread on the table. They have to figure out how they'll get paid for what they're doing. We talked before about if it bleeds, it leads, and the new version of that. So they got to do what they got to do, and they're testing things out. So you said, the more you hear about it, the more confused you get. I bet they feel the same way. But they're like, hey,
Sure.
uh, you know, we this is the thing. My opinion on this is only ever relative, right?
Sure.
I'm a red in Braver Angels, but there's a world in which I'm a blue in Braver Angels. It just depends on where the culture is, right? Like
Yeah,
I consider red
exactly.
and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, red and blue are relative terms.
Yes.
And my right now, where my feelings are very much are sympathetic to certain red concerns. When I was an activist, I was in the Democratic Socialists of America. So I'm responding to that, right? That
Mhm.
shaped me. And some of the things they did that were excesses shaped me. Um, so, I think that now I'm losing my train of thought because I could go in so many different directions, but I
That's
think
okay.
yeah,
That's a
that's
much
where we
more
are.
generous that's a much more generous answer than I would have given.
What's your answer? I mean, yes, don't get me wrong. There are certain people in the media that I'm like, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've become pretty cynical about this in a way that I don't necessarily want to be. The one thing that's really bugged me recently is in one of my classes that I'm in, which I love the professor and I love the class, and we have guest speakers maybe like every other week, and people that are at, local radio stations, it's a media programming, sales, and distribution class. It was all the business side. So we're getting sales people and PR people and everything coming in. And this is uh half of what they tell you is they're like, yeah, we kind of just make the numbers up a little bit. PR seems to be based on vibes and nothing else at this point. So
Yeah.
I think that's maybe where part of my cynicism has come from, is that I don't really even understand how the industry works. Like, one example I can give just very briefly is, I don't know if you're familiar with Nielsen, the
Yeah, I am.
company that gives
Yeah.
the TV ratings. So they
Mhm.
recently, in January of this year, they made an adjustment. So the way that ratings for radio used to work is that you had to listen for 5 minutes inside of any quarter hour, and that was
Okay.
one rating for the station. Whether those were
Mhm.
5 separate minutes or all together, that was a rating. If you listen to 5 minutes overlapping a quarter hour, it does not count. They changed it from 5 minutes down to 3 minutes in early January of this year.
Uh-huh.
And my professor, and the way that the professor and the guest speaker explained it was that, well, if you decrease the time needed to get a rating, then the stations have higher ratings. And then advertisers see that and they pour more money back into the radio station. So the radio station makes more money. And my first question was, where's the solid metric that any of this is based on? Because the way I'm seeing it is like, we're just the whole system is made up. And my professor goes, no, you're right. You're kind of right about that. And I was like, why? So it's been that for like 4 weeks. And I think also just the bias, like there was no class that I took. I'm graduating in April. There's no class that I took that really meaningfully covered bias. There was no conversation about how the mainstream has gotten more college educated, more elitist, more corporate, and how they're holding views that half the country just like doesn't even understand.
Yeah.
And there are some people that do a good job, I think, but for the most part, and this is something that Manu Meal talks about, like conflict entrepreneurs. I
Yes.
just see them in their heyday right now. Like, this is, the economy is going not well, apparently, according to what I hear. And yet all of these folks are talking about record profits and look how much money that Apple's going to make on streaming next year. And so I don't understand it. But you gave
Yeah.
a more, that they are trying to figure it out. I guess and you are right about that, and I would agree with you. I guess my next question would just be like, where are the conversations trying to figure it out? Because I don't even see those happening that often. But
Yeah.
I was
Well,
just,
they want to make money, right? Like
yeah,
that's like
yeah,
right. So there and the people who are probably doing the best with that are the people who are the conflict entrepreneurs, those extremes that we talked about before
yeah,
that we're all reacting to. So yeah, I'm definitely ready to criticize those people. I'm sure I think why they're doing it, and I don't think they're making the
sure,
world better, though they may be paying their for their kids' college tuition to make sure that their kids stay in that elite bubble, right?
right,
Like, yeah,
right,
right. So yeah, and that is one of my major critiques. If they don't go, if they don't put the effort in to represent views that cohort finds unpalatable, but that other parts of the country consider well within the Overton window, right? If they
yeah,
say, no, 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 we can't say that, why would you blame those people for going to read things like Breitbart, like One American News Network,
right,
like whatever,
right,
right?
yeah,
Like, yeah. So, yeah, that's a major criticism I would make of them. But the funding model seems to be supporting it. Again, come back like, does it pay?
yeah,
Which is a
yeah, no,
cynical thing, but also a very realistic thing. I say this as a organization that is funded by donors, by volunteers, by grants. And I
right,
basically give my work away for free, and there are limitations to that model as well. So
sure, sure.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's, and maybe that is a better way to. I'm not like, it's not every day that I feel like this. Some days I just get a little bit confused. It seems like the industry has really lost its way, and I don't think I think if it doesn't change, it's gonna get. I mean, it's already getting completely outpaced by new media. I suspect that if the mainstream doesn't make any meaningful changes, they're just going to become reduced, and they already kind of are. They're just being reduced to YouTube operations like most other
Yeah.
people in new media are. And And yet and at the same time, that's the system that they rail against constantly.
Mhm.
So I'm
Yes.
confused. Like, if you guys don't want to become that, you have to change something, and they don't seem willing to change it. And maybe that is because of the financial structure of things.
Who are the stakeholders? Like, it's driving me absolutely up the wall. I don't have cable. Like, do you have cable? Who
Nope.
millennial or younger has cable? It's
So
incredible.
actually, one thing that's interesting that I've seen, and I don't mean to like go too
No,
far into a
please.
tangent about this. Um, so what happened is the streaming world got so diversified, and so many people had streaming services with their own content, that people's streaming bills became as big as the cable bill. So what you're
True.
actually seeing is people are going back to cable and some of those satellite TV things, because you got people paying for 5 streaming services. That it
Yeah.
becomes the same as your cable bill. So
Mhm.
um yeah, but anyway, I wanted to keep just to go back to that conversation about like bias. I think is a big
Mhm.
thing. Um, what was the process? Was that something? I guess back in 20. You said you started it in 2018.
On Third Factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
that was kind of right. All Sides was around back then. Um, but I'm not sure if so. I guess I'm curious. What was the conversation about media bias? What did it look? Was that a thing back then when you started Third Factor? Was that because it doesn't seem like it's mainstream quite yet? It's like trying to get mainstream, but
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
seems like that conversation is much stronger now than it
Ah,
was maybe 10 years ago.
well, 2018. All right. Like 10 years ago, or 2025 as we speak. So 10 years ago was still pre Trump. And so
Yeah, yeah,
2018, when I started, I may be wrong about this, but my gut or my general recollection is it was Trump's election in 2016 that made people start thinking about that really
yeah,
hard. But yes,
yeah,
but it had happened first. Like people, of course, had talked about it before that. But then they saw a guy that many of them really hated get elected, and they're like, how did this happen? Right.
yeah,
And the people who voted for Trump were saying, like, hey, we voted for him because you're not paying attention to us, in so many words. Like he hears us, you don't.
yeah,
To boil it down and oversimplify it, but that was a theme. So that's like so much else. It catalyzed that discussion as well. One of the reasons Third Factor had, well, no, Third Factor didn't fall apart over this. Third Factor thrived because of
right,
this. But
right.
one of the difficult moments I had was when I wrote a piece on a very controversial issue. I don't know if you even want me to go into it,
You
but I
could,
published.
if you
Okay,
want
I mean, I
to.
wrote about the trans issue. Why were so
Okay.
many people in creative spaces questioning their gender identity, even using gender identity as a frame? And I tried to make it as open and like, let's listen to all sides. Let's interview people who are happy. Let's interview detransitioners was a word I had heard recently. Just trying to talk about a phenomenon that was happening in my creative spaces. And I think people listening to this might say, yeah, that is where it was happening, though that was 2017, 18. I understand it's even that dynamic is shifting very quickly. So
Yeah.
very much a time slice that we were in. And like anyone who wants to write anything on either side is welcome to submit it to Third Factor. And that
Mhm.
created such a fuss. A lot of
Oh, I
people were
bet.
very mad, you
I
know,
bet.
how you can't do that. I'm like, well, why can't I do that? I'm
Yeah.
publishing this. I'll publish anyone who has a charitable take, you know, a good faith take. So that was my experience of media bias, and then being afraid of the people, audience capture, right? Whatever your
Yeah.
stance is, if you say something that alienates the base that you've brought on board, maybe for saying something controversial, for having the courage to say it, people then start paying you. Oh crap! Now you are bought in.
Yep.
Now you don't want to lose those people. Now you have the golden handcuffs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, I like that. The golden handcuffs. That's a good way to put it.
Mhm.
I've never heard of that before.
So it's hard.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm.
It does seem like the minute that you get to the point where you're telling people that they can't say or publish something, that to me is very concerning. And it seems like maybe it's I mean, one thing that I still don't really think the left understands is the vibe shift that we went through, right
Yeah.
after the election. I don't think that collectively the left has really picked up on that, but so I think this is going to start to change. But there was a really weird point from, right whenever I was in high school, so it was like 2017 to 2020. It felt like that was a very popular sentiment, particularly on the left, which was that certain things were just not to be discussed at all. I think it still is kind of like that a little bit,
Yeah.
but it was really weird. And like the tech companies all had policies that definitely favored a left wing position. And I'm wondering, it does seem like we're leaving that now, because Zuckerberg is like, I mean, these tech people were Democrats up until 5 minutes ago. And then all of a sudden they're at Mar-a-Lago, they're having dinner with Trump, their Facebook isn't, Meta said they're not doing fact checking anymore. It's really weird how fast that can change.
Yes. Well, I'm not going to be so I was being nice about the media before. I'm ready to criticize those people who have,
No,
like,
yeah, right.
excuse me, do you have no principles, sir? Is your principle
Yeah,
only
right.
money and influence? And
Well,
like,
I
yeah,
think that's
like
kind of what
those,
it is.
yeah, of course. And that's very understandable. And also those people set themselves up to be the villains. They just have to
Yeah.
understand that they are doing that. Yeah.
Right. I'm not even kidding when I say this. If Zuckerberg came out tomorrow and he was like, "Hey, I just like money and I don't mind people dying. Let's go." I'd be like, "Well, at least he's being honest. At least he's being forthcoming with us. At
Yeah.
least."
Yeah.
Because this whole thing of like, I did think it was really funny seeing him surf in a tuxedo holding an American flag right after the assassination attempt on Trump. But again, it's like, dude, who's buying this? Who's
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you, man.
it's a tricky one that I'm very deeply skeptical of the tech crowd.
Yeah.
They're way too fickle. Like, why are you going to have dinner with Trump the minute after he
Okay.
wins?
Intra-red debates. I need
Sure.
a team Bannon, team Musk.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, because
Right?
he's been doing. Well, because now Steve Bannon's like doing the podcast, so he's gonna be on this soon. I might reach out. We might have Steve Bannon on.
Let me know. I want to. I
He
will watch that. I will then send him our way. We need him at Braver Angels too.
maybe I'll reach out to Elon and Steve. Maybe they should sit down. Maybe Joe Rogan should like get Elon and Steve. He's too much friends with Elon though. It wouldn't work. It's not the same. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We got a few, I guess, just some concluding wrap up questions for you here
Sure.
before we go. What is, like you said, David Blankenhorn's a very much of a visionary leader. What do you see the future of the Braver Angels debate program being?
We are broadening our scope. First of all, we have been focusing a lot on national debates, these things we do on Zoom. We will keep doing those. Those are sort of like the way in for a lot of people.
Yep.
Once they see that, what I hope they will do is say, hey, I want to do one of those in my hometown, in my local community. So I and my team, Natalie LaRoche and Sam Rechek, we're the national debate team. We will help you, along with some other volunteers, we will help you set up a debate in your own local alliance, Braver Angels Alliance. That's our word for chapter, right? Because they're always led by a red and a blue. So the first goal is we will grow our community debate program across this country and teach people to chair debates. It's a great skill set. It's a great leadership development program. So that's what we're doing. We're also going to be creating debates for more targeted niches, right? Like, first of all, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. Political realignment, fascinating topic, as I think this podcast, revealed. I'm very interested in that. The intra-blue, the intra-red debates, and then just finding, the young, very online people who some of our more, like, I'm going to use that word again, normie, our more normie members are like, wait, what's going on? I'm like, oh, you have no idea. I'm going to find, the actual fascists and the tankies, and I'm going to get them in a room together, right? Like,
yeah, wait until the actual fascist shows up to a Braver Angels to begin, like, or a Bridge USA, right? Like, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just funny though. Like, people think like that Nazis are just showing up to Bridge USA discussions.
Yeah. No, they're not. They're not.
Bull
But I,
bear.
I would consider it a success if I could get a debate for that group, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not joking, but like I don't only mean that. I mean I want, like, for instance, we have some people interested in mental health. So maybe we'll do
Hmm.
a series on mental health and like self-diagnosis as a topic or something like that.
Hmm.
We're going to expand both the geographical range and we're going to expand the topics and make it not so just like national red and blue. And we're
Sure.
also looking for partnership organizations to be partners to help us bring Braver Angels debates to their communities, help them be heard if they feel like they're not being heard. That matters to us a very great deal. And then we're also going to be doing something called a Coliseum debate, which I mentioned earlier. We bring in experts who have something interesting to say on this topic. If you happen to be in the Detroit area on May 18th, we're doing one on class politics and political realignment, a topic I
Ooh,
care about a great deal.
that'll
It
be
will
good.
also be YouTube live stream to a national audience. But if you can be in Detroit, come see us in person. So that's what we're
Awesome.
doing this year.
I like it. What do you think is something that is underrated or underappreciated in today's society?
That's a fascinating question. Um, okay. I am going to say, in my very overeducated circles, I think team sports are underappreciated.
Hmm. Interesting.
I find so many people. I don't know if you can see my backdrop. I have a picture of a hockey fight there.
I do see that now. That's really
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, that was a famous fight between the Detroit Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche that happened 28 years ago yesterday, as my Facebook feed was reminding me.
Oh wow.
Very famous for people who are like millennial Red Wings fans, and I'm from Detroit, so it reminds me of the very human nature of fighting for your side, of allegiance, of but of working together and just rallying with your group. And when I work in Braver Angels to be bridging divides all the time and, things that I really very strongly care about, I want to think not that, there is a reason why we affiliate with groups. And I'm also in this overeducated class where, people joke about sports ball. And I'm like, no, I really just want to sit down after a hard day and watch the Red Wings fight for a playoff spot. And I get a
Right,
big
right.
emotional boost when they win. Now they're not winning right now. I'm like, let's not get into that. But
Yeah, well, the
so,
Penguins are doing good. The Penguins, I don't even think they can get into the playoffs at this point.
yeah, you guys are struggling too.
I
Yeah.
don't really follow
So,
hockey. All I know is that they don't really have a chance to get in.
yeah. So, sympathy, solidarity to you guys in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. We'll get over the 2008 2009 thing. Where
You're
we were
right.
both in the finals.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
right.
gosh, I remember watching that game. I was a kid, like my dad was just watching. I remember like sitting down and like I didn't know what was going on. But
Yeah,
I do
right.
remember that game.
See, this matters. This is the kind of stuff that
Yeah.
matters. That I really think I'm weird in my circle. They're like, oh, Jesse watches sports. That's so cute and
Mm.
quaint. So I think it's
Right.
underappreciated.
Yeah, sure. Well, then
Mhm.
you'd love, I mean, at Point Park, Pittsburgh's such a big sports city. I mean, everyone at
Mhm.
Point Park is just
Yeah,
got the merch on all the time, which I
respect,
do like
man.
because I
Same as
do like
Detroit.
because I love Pittsburgh and I do like seeing people rep the merch. Um,
Mhm.
this is a question that I love. I got this in Kenosha from Monica Guzman. What is something you're afraid that people will get wrong about you?
Give me a moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. She likes to
Yeah,
do
it
that.
is.
She likes to drop
Yeah.
questions like that, just like they're nothing. She'll just move on.
Oh, okay. I talked about assertiveness before. I think I'm always afraid. I'm always walking the balance beam between I want to stand up for myself. I want to be a leader and like say, no, we're going to do this. I don't want to be like a doormat or a people pleaser. But I also don't want to push too hard and make it seem like I don't care what people think. Right.
Sure.
And so I guess that's a thing that I think about a lot. Am I going too far in either direction? And so I would
Hmm.
say, if I'm afraid someone will get it wrong, I'm afraid they won't see that I'm trying to walk that line. I'm afraid of going too far in either direction.
What's your favorite part of your job?
There's so many parts of it. I love
It's
chairing
true.
debates. I love coming up with resolutions, and I love helping other people learn how to
Mhm.
chair debates, pick resolutions that work for them. Just seeing a report about an alliance that did a debate for the first time and we helped them get there, that is so rewarding. I'm so glad to be doing what I'm doing because it changes people's lives. That's my favorite. All of that is my favorite.
Well, Jessie Mannisto, thank you for sitting down with me today. It was really great talking to you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Carson. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week. Okay, gotta just end this.